Alrighty, so thank you for purchasing the Tide preset pack. This is something I'm pretty excited to be sharing. All of these presets have been sort of developed over a lot of time, a lot of photos, a lot of energy in a whole lot of different places. So I'm excited to kind of bring them all together in the Tide pack. So in this tutorial today, I'm just going to walk you through how to get started with the pack, how to import it into Lightroom, and just a little bit of a tutorial on how to apply it to your selected images. So first up, you're just going to open up your Lightroom catalog. This is one that I have just put a couple of raw files into just to kind of have a little bit of a play around. So you're going to pick the first photo that you would like to edit. And to kick things off today, I'm going to go with this one here. And so now you're just going to come across to your Develop tab over here. And as you come into the Develop tab, you're going to see your preset section over here on the left-hand side. As you can see, I only have a little reset preset in there. Press on this little plus sign here to import them. Come down to Import Presets. And then you're going to have this screen come up here, which, you're just kind of picking where you would like to import from. And so I've saved my Tide preset back to my desktop, so it's under the desktop section. So I'm going to click on that and press import. Now you'll see that your presets have imported here over on the left hand side. So while you're in the develop module, you see all of the presets there. There is 6 different presets, all kind of varying in different, color temperatures, different toning. You'll find that each different preset is kind of better for different applications, different photos. Some are better for warm photos, some are better for cool photos, some are better for skin tones. There's really a broad sort of balance as a lot of my work, while there's portraiture work involved, there's also a lot more landscapes, automotive, and a whole range of variable sort of light conditions. So yeah, the Tide collection has been created to kind of cater for all of those different sort of lighting conditions. You'll see throughout here that there is 6 different color presets, 5 different color presets and 1 black and white preset. And then there is 4 different variations of grain. So they start with the double minus being the lowest intensity, the minus being the second lowest intensity, the plus being an increased intensity, and the double plus being the highest intensity of grain in the pack. So you're going to come through here and select which preset would match for this image. So in terms of showcasing my workflow, I'll start by resetting the image. So normally I come through here first and I select which preset I like the colors of the most, which is going to kind of match with the image. I think for this one I'm going to stick to number 3. First of all, I'm just going to apply number 3 and then pull up the exposure a little bit. I like the way that the skin tones are matched, and I also like the tones of the greens. One thing I will do for this particular image is bring down the blacks a little bit. You'll also notice that the highlights are muted, so a lot of these presets, they kind of have sort of a muted sort of highlights, which just kind of makes them a little bit more creamy, which is kind of what we're after in for a bit of a vintage feel. So as we come across to the temperature, I'm just going to increase the color temperature just to kind of enhance those skin tones a little bit and just give the whole image a little bit more of a warmer feel. As I do that, I'm just going to play around with the temperature until I find something that I like. Keep playing around with the exposure and everything like that. One thing I do is I check in on the histogram up the top here. It just kind of shows you the different sections that your image is in. For this one, I'm kind of keeping it a little bit darker. That's kind of the theme of the image. Most of it is kind of darker, just to kind of emphasize the little light patch there on my girlfriend Pilly's eye. So play around with those until you kind of find something that you like. I'm pretty happy with how this one's looking for now. And then I'm going to come through here and select my grain as the next section of this workflow. So for this one, I think I'll probably do the plus, so not the full level of intensity, but still kind of up there. The last thing that I would kind of do while I'm editing this particular image, with greens, often you find a whole lot of different plants and everything like that. They kind of show up a little bit differently in post. For this one, it's a very lush green that I would like to just kind of drop down a little bit further. So if you come down here to your green slider in the saturation, just pull that down a little bit more. And even the yellows a little bit, because there's a little bit of yellow creeping into those greens, and I might almost even pull my hue of my yellows down a little bit as well, just to kind of match it all up and give it a little bit of like an orangey green sort of overtone to the image there. One last thing I might do, come over here to the selective brushes, and then just put that one on here. Select this foreground leaf. I love it, it's beautiful, but it is kind of just taking a little bit of attention away from the image. So once I've kind of masked that area, I've got the auto mask on for this one. I'll just kind of drop that down, drop down the exposure, drop down the highlights. I'm actually going to turn off the auto mask just to kind of even that up. Just on the edge there. So now for me, that's looking pretty good. Last thing I do, come in and crop it a little bit. If it's going on Instagram, put it on a 4x5. And that's looking pretty good to me. Next up, how about we come over here to the lightning bolt, another one with my girlfriend Pilly actually. And on this one, it's a little bit of a cooler image overall. So I'm going to come through here, and I think I'm going to select Tide 05. Just for this one, I like the way it kind of maintains the cool tones across the image. But one thing I'm not a fan of is just the level of the blacks here. So I'll just come over here to the slider and pull that back up a little bit. Maybe pull down the shadows a little bit as well. I find that by doing that, you just kind of take the hard edge off the blacks, but you do still maintain that nice sort of dark, moody contrast with a very heavy shadow based images. You can kind of see from the histogram here as well, most of our image detail is kind of sitting down the left hand side of the towards the shadows there. So then I'm just going to come along here. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the way that this image is looking as well. See if I kind of play around with the temperature a little bit, but to be honest, I'm pretty happy with how this is sitting. Maybe even just pull down the tint a little bit just to kind of enhance, put a little bit more green in there, make the blues a little bit more of an aqua. And yeah, that's kind of becoming something that I'm really happy with this image here. And then come down here, select your different levels of grain. I think for this one, I might go a little bit more extreme on it. Go with the double plus. So I'll flag that one up. I'll flag up our original one as well, so we can kind of have a little bit of a look at what we've kind of edited once this piece is complete. And finally, yeah, just a little bit of crop on there. Pretty happy with that. Maybe the last thing, I just pull down those highlights a little bit more and bring up the shadows just to kind of even it out a little bit, because there's a bit of contrast coming in from that lightning bolt up there. Next up, what should we edit? How about we do, let's do this one here. This was a fun shoot out in California. A little bit underexposed, this one for now. Pull that up a little bit there. And as we kind of come through the different selection, cycle through, find a preset that we like. Maybe number 6. It's a little bit extreme as it is, because it's got a lot of magentas and reds in the shadows. But if you pull up that exposure, then it sort of evens it out and you get a little bit more of the yellows coming into the highlights, and it is less extreme. This is probably my favorite preset from the pack, just because I really love the combination of the mixing those reds into the undertone, a bold sort of look, and you can really play around with it a lot as well. If you want to have a whole lot of reds kind of coming in your shadows, you keep it down lower, and if that's not kind of your theme, pull it up, the exposure up a little bit more, and it kind of disappears. It also, on an image like this, for example, I start down at the reset. I love number 6 here as well, because you pull it down, and as you pull it down, there's a whole lot more of those sort of reds that kind of come into it, and it does become a whole lot moodier, and it's just I love the kind of look and feel of that. So on that, I've then also just put the double grain on just to really sort of grain it up, and then I've also just pulled down the whites in there as well, just to kind of drop that overall contrast. Put in a little bit of crop, and that's our before and after. So that's, yeah, number 6. I love it. So yeah, continue back on this image, play around with the exposure until you find something that you like. Little bit of grain, not too much on this one, and already I'm really liking how this is kind of looking. And also just play around with the temperature a little bit until you kind of find something that you like, lean into those magentas a little bit more as well. It was a warm, beautiful sunset in the desert. So yeah, matches up quite nicely. I'm pretty happy with that one as well. May as well flag this one up as well, actually. Now let's edit a little bit of a cooler image. So as we kind of run through here, just fine. Let's go with number 3 on this. Just kind of matches in with those cool tones a little bit nicer. Pull up the blacks just because there's a whole lot of contrast in this shot. You can see it's a big sort of difference, a lot of shadow around the edges and then the highlights in the middle. So I'm just going to pull down those highlights and lift up those shadows. Actually, you'll keep the shadows about as they are, but I'll just pull up the blacks to kind of compensate. And then pull those shadows right down. I just find that really sort of balances everything out nicely, removes the contrast, or excessive contrast that is. But yeah, kind of still keeps a whole lot of negative space in the image, which is a thing that I love to do. Next thing I'm going to do here is just play around with the white balance to find the tone that I'm after, maybe warm it up a little bit, but then compensate for that warming up by pulling those greens down, and then we're just kind of really leaning into the way that they, so pull the tint down, sorry, and that really just kind of leans into the overtone of the image. And then finally put some grain onto that. A whole lot of grain, actually. I love it. And that is looking exactly as I would like it to. And now from here, a little bit of an automotive shot, again, underexposed, trying to save those highlights. As we're running along doing the roller shots here, you can see the sun was kind of dashing in and out behind the trees, so sometimes you have a whole lot of sunlight. But for me, this is kind of a perfect sort of spot. You got some nice sunlight coming across the road, but the car itself isn't too illuminated. You got some little details on the left-hand side that have been picked up quite nicely, but it's not too much. So first things first, pull up my exposure, just kind of find something roughly that's just going to help me sort of see how these presets look a little bit better. A lot of weird, funky colors going on, a little bit too much for my own liking. Cycle through the different presets, find the one that you like. Let's go with, I love number 6 on there. But let's go with number 2 for this one. So yeah, it kind of makes the greens a whole lot warmer overall, so it makes those greens sort of wash out, and so it makes those greens just kind of get a whole lot warmer, which is nice. I think for the purpose of this image, let's lean into that a little bit more because we did have a lot of sunlight, so it kind of matches up quite nicely. Pull up those blacks and drop down those shadows a bit as well, just to kind of mute those blacks but keep them fairly present. Maybe pull up the exposure a little bit more, come over to the crop, find something that you like. I'd probably make a little bit more emphasis on the car, so I am going to crop a little bit here, keeping it fairly centered. And then I'm going to add on my grain on the top here. So I think with that, I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. Maybe just because I really do like the warmth in the image, I'm going to come down here to my HSL sliders and pull up my yellows and my greens, just give them a little bit more life. Maybe play around with those greens, maybe drop them back down a little bit. Yeah, for me, I'm kind of liking how that one's sitting. Flag that one and add that to our collection. Now let's go to a surf shot. This was one of those mornings that you've gotten up early for a sunrise. It wasn't really a sunrise. So I love the image and I love the motion and everything like that, but I don't love the colors that are in there too much. Also just love using black and white. I feel like it's just a whole lot more emotive. So come in here, put tide number 4 on our black and white preset. And then come through here, been playing around, pulled the highlights up a little bit just to create a little bit more contrast in there. Pulled the blacks down as well just to further enhance that contrast so we can just kind of see our subject a little bit more as there is a bit of motion in the image. And then yeah, add on some grain. I don't want too much grain on this, maybe just like a single minus. But yeah, I'm loving how that's looking. So flag that one, add that to a collection. And then finally for now, let's do this one. It's a warm day at the pass here in Byron Bay. So yeah, straighten that up, a bit of motion in there, also a whole lot of dust on my sensor. Didn't have my ND filter with me on this day, so I pushed it up to F22, which for the vintage feel, to be honest, it's quite nice. It adds in those dust and scratches, which does sort of mix in with that quite nicely. So then we're just gonna scroll through here until we find a preset that we like. Let's go with number 1 on here. And we're just gonna pull up the exposure a little bit, and really let's lean into the warmth here. I just kind of like the, keeping it warm. The sun's already there. Let's not overcomplicate the colors in this. Pull the tint down. I often do kind of pull the tint down in my images. I find that keeping the greens in there does, just kind of balances out nicely, and just keeps a consistent sort of toning throughout. And now there's still a little bit too much contrast in here, so I'm just going to pull my blacks up a little bit and pull my shadows down just to compensate for the increasing in the blacks there. Maybe just drop the exposure a little bit, keep it moody, drop the highlights, just to add a little bit more detail back in there. Liking how this is going so far. Let's pull this down to a 4x5 like this. And now let's add on some grain, not too much, just with a single plus on there. It's looking pretty good to me. Maybe I'm just going to warm it up a little bit more again. I find warming images up is just a really nice way to kind of keep a consistent sort of tone in there as well, and it just kind of does. And just pull the temperature up. It's just a really nice way to really just lean into those, and just pull the temperature up. It really is just a nice way to lean into the warmth of the image that we already kind of had there. Maybe even pull down my oranges in the HSL just to kind of match that out a little bit more. And that's something that I'm pretty happy with for now. So let's just pop in here back to our initial images and go to our flagged shots. So this is kind of our collection that we have created so far. I'm really liking the colors on these as they are, leaning into the different colors, but at the same time, keeping a bit of a consistent theme across. Maybe one thing I would do, pull these yellows down, or just kind of make them a little bit warmer, just to keep that consistency across. Same with the greens here. And even I might play around with these just a little bit more. But yeah, in summary, that's kind of just a little bit of a walkthrough on the Tide preset pack. So yeah, hope that you have enjoyed the tutorial, and I hope that you've learned a lot through this tutorial, and I'm excited to see some of these images edited with this pack floating around on the web. So yeah, thank you again, much appreciated.